Thursday started like any other day: morning coffee, a couple hours in the garage, and back-to-back meetings until around 4. But for some reason, I felt this pull to come home early. No big reason. Just one of those quiet nudges. We'd both been off lately, and I thought maybe doing something nice could cut through the weird silence that had crept into our home the past few weeks. So I stopped by the butcher on the way back. Picked up 2 thick ribeyes, her favorite wine, even a little dessert from that overpriced bakery she loves. On the drive, I imagined the evening. Music playing in the background, us cooking side by side, maybe even laughing like we used to. I don't know. I guess I wanted to believe we were just in a rut, not drifting apart. But when I opened the door, something felt off. The air didn't smell like anything. No spices, no garlic, no sizzling oil, nothing. The kitchen lights were off. The pans I'd left out that morning were still untouched. The table was clear. No candles, no plates, no note, just quiet. And then I saw her, Emma, walking out of the bedroom in a red dress that looked like it belonged in a nightclub, not on a warehouse floor. Tight fit, deep neckline. Her hair curled in that way she only ever bothered with on anniversaries or weddings. She froze for a second when she saw me, like she hadn't expected me home yet. Her hand slipped something into her purse quickly, and I caught the glint of a familiar bottle. Her perfume, the expensive one she'd said she was saving for something special. Guess tonight counted. I raised the grocery bag a little, almost sheepish. "Hey, I thought we were doing dinner?" She blinked, smiled, but not the kind that reaches the eyes. "Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. That was tonight?" She glanced at her phone like she needed to pretend to check. I nodded. "Thursday. We talked about it Monday, remember?" She shrugged, brushing past me toward the front door. "Yeah. I just forgot. One of my coworkers called, asked me to cover her evening shift. She said it was an emergency." I set the bag down slowly. "What coworker?" Emma didn't answer right away. She adjusted the strap of her purse, fiddling with her keys. "I don't know if you'd know her." I stepped a little closer, trying to keep my tone calm. "What's her name?" She finally looked at me then, really looked at me, and something flashed in her eyes. Not guilt, not surprise, annoyance. "Are we really doing this again?" she said, her voice already rising. "Jesus, you always twist everything. It's like you want to fight." I flinched, more from the way she said it than the words themselves. "I'm not trying to start anything. Your dress, the perfume, you didn't even text to cancel. Caught me off guard." Emma rolled her eyes. "So what? I threw on something nice because I felt like it. That's not a crime. And I didn't think dinner was that serious." I looked at the steaks in the bag, already starting to sweat in their wrapping. The wine bottle was still cold. I'd even bought her favorite salted chocolate tart. "You said this week felt heavy and that we needed a night in. I was trying to give us that." She exhaled sharply and crossed her arms. "Yeah, and then I got asked to cover a shift. I didn't plan it, Mark. Life happens. You always take everything so personally." There it was, the twist, the shift of blame. I stood in the center of the kitchen, still holding the receipt in my hand, feeling like a fool for trying. "You could have called." Emma didn't answer. Instead, she walked past me and opened the door. "I don't have time for another interrogation. I'm going to be late." "Emma." I tried, but she was already stepping into the hall. She turned back, her expression unreadable. "We'll talk later. Or not. Up to you." And just like that, she was gone. The door clicked shut. I heard the elevator chime a moment later, and I just stood there, in a house that suddenly felt too big, while 2 ribeyes slowly went cold on the counter. I don't remember how long I stood there. I sat at the table eventually, poured a glass of wine, and stared across at her empty chair. Her napkin was still folded from the last time we'd eaten together. That night, she'd barely touched her food and said she was just tired. She'd gone to bed early, claiming a headache, but I heard her on her phone well past midnight. That night had bothered me, but I let it go, just like I'd let go of so many small things lately. But something about this night stuck. The way she didn't even try to hide the perfume. The way she was dressed. Too perfectly, too deliberately, for a last-minute warehouse shift. And the way she snapped at me when I asked something as simple as who had called her. Emma used to joke that I was the calm one in the relationship. That even when things went sideways, I kept us grounded. But lately, she'd flipped that on its head. Now, any question was control. Any concern was jealousy. Any request for time together was clingy. I started to feel like I was walking through a minefield in my own home. That night, sitting in the kitchen, I replayed it over and over. Her tone, her posture, that flash of something when I asked too much. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fear of getting caught. Or maybe, and this was the part one didn't want to believe, maybe she didn't care if I caught her at all. I didn't sleep much. Around midnight, I checked my phone, half hoping she'd text. But there was nothing. Not even the usual home late message. Around 1:20 a.m., I heard the lock turn. She came in quietly, heels in hand, hair a little messy. She looked surprised to see me still up. "You're still awake?" she asked, trying to sound casual. I nodded. "Yeah." She didn't offer anything else. Just mumbled something about being exhausted and disappeared into the bathroom. The water ran for a long time. When she finally came out, her face was clean, makeup wiped away, but she didn't look at me. Just said good night and crawled into bed, turning away from me without another word. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathing even out. And that was when I knew something had changed. And maybe deep down she didn't want to fix it. I didn't confront her the next morning. Couldn't. I woke up to the sound of the shower running, the soft thud of cabinet doors opening and closing, and the faint scent of citrus shampoo. Not the one she usually used. She was moving through the morning like nothing had happened. Like the night before had been completely ordinary. When I walked into the kitchen, she was already dressed in her uniform, sitting at the counter sipping coffee with her phone face down beside her. She looked up, gave me a quick smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes, and said, "Morning." That was it. I didn't push. I couldn't bring myself to. Something about the way she sipped her coffee and avoided eye contact made me feel like if I asked even one question, the whole thing would crack open. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I nodded, made myself a cup, and sat across from her. She scrolled through her phone absent-mindedly. Her replies were short. Her attention kept drifting to the clock. And after 10 minutes, she stood up, kissed my cheek, and said, "I'll see you tonight." But she didn't say what time, or where she was going after work, or even how her shift was supposed to run that day. The details that used to flow so naturally between us had vanished. After she left, I sat in silence for a long while, hands wrapped around a cup that had long gone cold. Something inside me had shifted, a quiet click in my chest, like a lock turning. That was the morning I let myself stop pretending everything was fine. Once I let that door open, the memories came pouring through. The canceled plans, the silence, the deflections, the one-word answers to texts I used to get paragraphs from. The way she'd started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. The gym trips where she didn't come back sweaty. The subtle smell of someone else's cologne that wasn't mine. The earrings I found in the glove compartment that weren't hers, or so she claimed. "Oh, they must have been from when I gave Rachel a ride," she'd said casually. But Rachel had short hair. And that day a few weeks ago when I reached for her hand while we were sitting on the couch and she pulled away. Not abruptly, not angrily, but in that quiet, distant way that made it clear it wasn't an accident. That one stuck with me. It wasn't the kind of change you notice overnight. That's the cruel part. It was slow, like watching paint peel off the walls or a leak drip under the sink. You don't see it until the damage is already done. I started noticing how often she had evening meetings now, despite not being in a management role. She'd take calls outside, her voice hushed. If I walked into the room, the conversation would abruptly end, or she'd wander into another room and close the door behind her. When I asked once who she was talking to, she laughed and said, "My mom, obviously. Are you going to start policing my phone calls now?" And just like that, I was the problem again. Her favorite tactic had become deflection. Anything I brought up was me being controlling or me being suspicious for no reason. Once, when I pointed out she hadn't come home until almost 1 a.m. and hadn't texted all night, she replied with, "I didn't realize I needed to check in with my warden." That was the night I slept in the guest room. She didn't ask me why. I started keeping track. Not in some paranoid, obsessive way, just mentally, quietly, as a man who didn't want to be blindsided. Her late-night showers. Her new passwords. Her sudden interest in going to places we used to avoid, that cafe across town, that park near the highway. One Saturday morning, I decided to clean out her car. She'd always driven a mess, and I figured maybe doing something nice would spark some warmth again. But as I was vacuuming under the passenger seat, I found a coffee cup, large, white, with the logo of a local cafe she never liked. We'd gone there once a year ago and she'd called it pretentious and overpriced. But here it was, with her lipstick smudged along the lid. When I asked her about it, she barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, I just needed a change. What's with the third degree?" That had become the pattern. Every curiosity was an accusation. Every observation a threat. If I said I missed her, I was being needy. If I said I wanted more time together, I was smothering. She started planning her weekends without me. Visiting friends she hadn't mentioned before, working double shifts, going hiking with people from the gym I'd never met. Once, she came home late in gym leggings, but no water bottle, no towel, no sweat. Her hair was perfectly done. Her phone buzzed twice while she was changing in the bathroom, and she grabbed it so fast I barely saw the screen. But I caught a name I didn't recognize. Something generic. "Alex." I tried to ask just once, gently. "Hey, who's Alex?" She stared at me like I'd just accused her of murder. "Are you seriously checking my phone now?" "Jesus, Mark. Paranoid much?" I backed off. That was her gift, turning it around, making me question my own senses, making me feel like the villain for simply noticing things. So I stopped mentioning them, stopped pointing them out. But I didn't stop noticing. Her phone, which used to sit charging on the nightstand, now lived in her bag or back pocket. It was always on silent. Notifications hidden. One day I heard her laugh at a message while we were sitting on the porch. I asked what was so funny, and she said, "Nothing, just a meme." Then she locked her screen and went inside. Even int asterisk Macy changed. It became rare, mechanical, when it happened at all. And afterward, she'd turn away like she was trying to disappear into the wall. No tenderness, no talking, just silence. I still remember the moment I knew, deep down, that something had broken. I was getting ready for work, and I found her standing by the bedroom window, fully dressed, just staring, like she wasn't really there. When I walked in, she didn't hear me at first. I said her name softly, and she flinched. "Sorry," she said. "Just zoned out." "Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said too quickly. "Just thinking." And that was it. She didn't elaborate, didn't ask how I was, didn't kiss me goodbye. That night, I stayed late at work. Not because I had to, but because I didn't want to go home. She didn't text to ask where I was. She used to. For weeks, I'd been living in that strange limbo, half knowing something was wrong, half hoping I was imagining it. You tell yourself you're overthinking. You tell yourself stress is making you paranoid. You tell yourself that the person you love couldn't possibly be doing that. But deep down, the truth is already sitting there like a stone in your stomach. Unmovable, heavy, silent. The night she came home at 3:07 a.m. was the turning point. It was a Tuesday, a completely normal, unremarkable day. She'd said she was grabbing a quick drink with coworkers, which I didn't question. I even encouraged her, trying to be supportive. But as the hours ticked by, and my texts went unanswered, and her location stayed unavailable, a familiar dread crawled back up my spine. When she finally stumbled through the door, she looked startled to see me awake. "You scared me," she said, clutching her purse. "Why aren't you asleep?" I looked at the clock. "Emma, it's after 3. She shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "I crashed at Sarah's for a bit. We had wine." I didn't want to drive. I nodded slowly. You don't smell like wine. She froze for a fraction of a second, barely noticeable, but it was enough. I changed clothes, she said quickly. At her place. Right? I murmured. And she went straight to the shower, like she always did after coming home too late. That was the night I finally accepted I needed something beyond suspicions. Beyond guesswork. I needed proof. Not to hurt her and not to hurt myself, but because the not knowing was eating me alive. So the next morning, I called the number my coworker had given me months ago. A private investigator he'd used during his own messy breakup. I'd saved the contact but never imagined I'd actually use it. His name was Carter. Gruff voice, short sentences, no small talk. When I explained my situation, he said, "I'll take care of it." Like I was hiring someone to fix a broken faucet, not investigate my wife. He didn't ask many questions. Just schedules, where she worked, her car model, the places she frequented. He told me it'd take about a week. Maybe 2. Took 3 days. On Friday afternoon, he texted, "Report ready. You'll want to read this in private." My heart dropped so hard I had to sit down. I told him to meet me at my workshop, the only place I knew she'd never show up. He arrived wearing a baseball cap pulled low, carrying a sealed envelope like it weighed 50 pounds. "Everything's in here," he said. "Dates, times, photos. You want it digital too?" "No," I said quickly. "Paper is fine." He nodded once. His face softened slightly. Not pity, just professionalism with a hint of understanding. "I'm sorry, man. Take care." Then he left. For a few minutes, I just stared at the envelope on my workbench. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I felt like I was stepping off a cliff, about to free fall into whatever truth was inside. But once you go that far, you can't turn back. You either open the envelope or live forever in ignorance. And ignorance wasn't an option anymore. So I opened it. The first page was a summary. Clean, clinical, impersonal. Subject: observed meeting with unidentified male individual on 3 separate occasions. Locations include hotel parking lot, suburbs, barbershop, and cafe on Eastwood. Patterns suggest non-professional relationship. My vision blurred for a moment. I had to steady myself against the workbench. Then the photos. The first was blurry. A zoomed sh*T of Emma walking into the front entrance of a hotel on Westbrook Avenue. She was wearing that same red dress. The one she claimed was just something she felt like throwing on. Her hair curled just like it had been the night she covered a shift. She wasn't alone. A man, tall, dark jacket, hands in his pockets, walked beside her. I didn't recognize him. Not yet. The next photos were clearer. Them walking through the hotel lobby around 7:18 p.m. Entering the elevator together. The timestamp of them leaving was 12:26 a.m. Their body language wasn't overly affectionate. No touching, no kissing. But they walked too close. Their movements were in sync. Familiar. There was another set of photos, daytime ones. Emma stepping out of her car and walking into a barbershop across town. The same man was visible inside, sweeping hair, laughing with another employee. The report said he worked there. A stylist. So her styling appointment last week, the one that made no sense because she'd already gotten her hair done days before, suddenly fit into place. Then the photo that broke me in a way I didn't expect. Emma sitting in his barber chair, smiling. One hand pushing her hair back while he worked. Her face looked content. Relaxed in a way she hadn't looked around me for months. The last set was the worst. Them together at a cafe I didn't know she even liked. She always said it was too hipster. But in the photo she was laughing. Really laughing. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in ages. And he was leaning in, saying something. Their shoulders almost touching. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but like a slow tear. When I finished the stack, I didn't feel anger. Not at first. Just a hollow exhale. Like someone had punctured a hole in my chest and let all the air out. Everything finally made sense. The late nights. The gym trips without gym clothes. The phone on silent. The mood swings. The red dress. the perfume hidden in her purse, the accusations she threw at me whenever I asked even the smallest question. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. I was right. That should have brought some kind of relief. But all I felt was exhaustion. Heavy, bone-deep exhaustion. The kind that settles into you and refuses to leave. I sat there in my workshop for almost an hour, the photos scattered around me like pieces of a puzzle I wished I'd never solved. The sounds of wrenches clinking on metal, the smell of oil, things that usually grounded me, felt distant. It was surreal, looking at printed proof of a reality I never wanted to believe. Proof that the woman I'd built a life with was building something else with someone else. At some point, my phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Running late. Don't wait up." I stared at the screen, the irony almost laughable. I didn't reply. I just leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and let the truth settle. Not gently, not kindly, but like a weight I'd been unknowingly carrying finally revealing itself. And once you see something like that, you know there's no going back. I didn't rush into it. That might surprise you, it surprised me. After seeing the photos, after holding undeniable proof of what she'd done, I thought I'd go home that night and just unload. Confront her. Scream. Cry. Demand answers. But instead, I went home and said nothing. She was already in bed by the time I walked in. Lights off, curled up on her side of the mattress like nothing had changed. I stood in the doorway watching her for a long moment. Her breathing was steady, peaceful, like someone who hadn't just detonated a grenade in someone else's life. I climbed into bed without a word and lay awake, staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. The next day at work, I printed the photos. Call it petty, call it strategic. I needed her to see it. Not on a phone screen she could lock or swipe away from, but on paper, tangible. I needed her to hold it in her hands and feel it. I placed them in a plain manila envelope and left it on the kitchen table with a single note clipped to the front. I know. That night I didn't go home. I stayed late at the workshop. Not working, just existing. Drinking burnt coffee. Sitting on the cold metal steps in the back. Watching the sky turn from blue to orange to black. I wanted her to be the one pacing. The one with questions. I wanted her to sit in the silence she'd created. At 3:30 a.m. she texted me. "Emma, can't talk now. We'll call later." 18 minutes later, I heard the pounding on the front door of the shop, then the handle rattling, then crying. "Mark, please just open the door. Please." I didn't move. I sat at my desk in the back, listening to her through the thin walls. She was desperate, panicked, but not because she regretted what she'd done, no. I knew her tone too well. This wasn't remorse. This was fear. Fear of consequence. After 5 minutes, the sound stopped. The hallway fell silent again. I waited another half hour before going out. She was gone. The next morning, when I came back to the house, the envelope was still on the table, unopened. But she was there, sitting on the floor in the hallway, knees to her chest, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She looked up as I entered, and for a second, we just stared at each other like strangers meeting for the first time. I dropped my keys in the bowl and said nothing. "Mark!" Her voice cracked. I walked past her, picked up the envelope, opened it, and laid the photos out on the table one by one, like evidence in a courtroom. She didn't even pretend not to know what they were. Her hands started shaking. "It's not what you think," she whispered. I let out a breath and looked at her, really looked at her. "Then tell me what it is." She didn't move. She just sat there, frozen, her mouth half open like she wanted to speak but had forgotten how. "Because what it looks like," I continued, "is you sneaking off to a hotel with someone who isn't your husband. A man you visited at his job. A man you laughed with, dressed up for, lied for." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't stop. "It looks like someone who didn't just slip once, but who planned, repeatedly, who built a second life while coming home to me and pretending everything was fine." "I didn't," she started, then trailed off. "It wasn't supposed to go that far." "That far?" I repeated. "So how far was okay?" lying to my face, hiding in plain sight, gaslighting me every time I asked a question? She stood now, trembling. I swear, Mark, we didn't do anything. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insulting. You checked into a hotel with him for 5 hours. You want me to believe you just talked? She reached for me, but I stepped back. That's when the real spiral started. First came the denial. I don't even know why I did it. I felt lost, like I was disappearing. Then the blame. You stopped seeing me. You didn't notice when I changed my hair, or when I started staying late to feel useful. You were always busy. Then the hysteria. I messed up. I know I did, but I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear. I was stupid. I just needed to feel something. And finally, the bargaining. We can fix this. Please. We can go to therapy. We can start over. I'll delete everything. Block him. You're the only one I want. But nothing she said sounded real. Her voice was too rushed, too disjointed. Like she was trying on every emotion, hoping one would fit. But none of it landed. I picked up the envelope and tossed it into the trash. I'm filing for divorce, I said. She went completely still. What? You'll be served within the week, I added calmly. I already have a lawyer. No. Her voice broke. No, Mark, please. Don't do this. We can come back from this. I'll do anything. I shook my head. You already did everything. She started crying again. Loud, ugly sobs that echoed down the hallway. But I didn't move. I didn't go to her. I'd done that too many times before, comforted her when she was the one who broke something. I want your things packed by tomorrow, I said. I'll be staying at the shop tonight. Please, she whispered. You're making a mistake. I paused at the door. No, I said softly. I made the mistake of trusting someone who couldn't even look me in the eye and tell the truth. That night, I slept on the old couch in my office. It smelled like dust and engine oil. But for the first time in months, I slept through the night. When I returned the next evening, the house was quiet. Her clothes were gone. Half the closet empty. Bathroom shelves cleared. No note. No voicemail. Just absence. And God, it was loud. I walked room to room, staring at the gaps where her things used to be. Felt like an amputation. Clean cut but aching. Every drawer she'd emptied. Every framed photo missing from the wall. Left behind echoes. Ghosts. And all I could think was, this is what she chose. The silence didn't feel peaceful. Not yet. Felt final. But somehow, it also felt like the beginning of something. Emma left the house without a word. No goodbye. No message. No keys left on the counter like I half expected. Just gone. I found out where she was staying 2 days later. Her car was parked outside Melanie's house. Her best friend. Someone who'd once hugged me at our wedding with tears in her eyes and called me the rock Emma needed. Now, Melanie didn't even look in my direction when we crossed paths at the gas station. Just turned her head like I wasn't even there. I guess she chose her side. Fair enough. It's a strange thing losing a person like that. Not just the partner, but all the people that came with them. The shared circle that once felt like family now becomes a map divided. Some people stop calling. Others go quiet out of awkwardness, not knowing what to say. And a few, the ones who mattered most, they stay. Greg from work was the first one I told. We'd shared a garage shift for nearly 6 years, but I never really talked about my personal life. Still, when I told him everything, not the edited version, but the full story, photos and all, he just nodded and said, I always thought she looked through you. That sentence stuck with me. Looked through me. I started telling more people. My brother, my cousin Jess, even my neighbor, Mr. Albright, who just handed me a beer and said, Divorce *CKs. I've had 2. One was worth it. People were kind in their own ways. The ones who knew me really knew me, didn't ask for the full play-by-play. They didn't try to tell me how to fix it. They just listened. That was all I needed. And the people who didn't, they filtered themselves out. It was cleaner that way. Emma started texting me a few days after she moved out. At first it was logistical. Emma, can I come by to grab my passport? Emma, I left my yoga mat in the hall closet. Is it okay if I swing by when you're not home? I didn't respond. Then the tone shifted. Emma, I miss you. I hate how this happened. Emma, I can't sleep. Emma, do you ever think about me? Some messages were long, scattered paragraphs of regret, reflection, bargaining. Others were as short as a single word. Sorry. One night she sent a voice memo. I never opened it. I wasn't angry anymore, not exactly. I just didn't want to hand her more of my peace. That was the line I drew. I would not be her emotional cleanup crew. I changed the locks a week after she left. Not out of spite, just precaution. She didn't fight me on it. I closed our joint bank account the same day. Moved utilities into my name. Scrubbed her from the documents she'd once been listed on for tax benefits and work emergencies. Updated every password. Even took her off the emergency contact at my doctor's office. Every click, every form, every confirmation email felt like a thread being snipped. Not out of revenge, out of survival. There was something satisfying about it. Not joyful, just solid. Like putting bricks back in place one by one. I wasn't building something new yet, but I was finally sealing up the holes. She tried calling me once from an unknown number. I let it ring. A few days later, she emailed. I didn't open it. I had nothing left to give her. Not an explanation, not closure, not even anger. Let her find her own. Friends started to visit more. Sarah brought soup one night and left it on the porch like I was recovering from surgery. Greg and I worked late hours in the garage, not saying much. Just working. Sometimes that's better than talking. Then there was Ethan, my best friend since college, who showed up uninvited on a Saturday with a case of beer and a worn-out deck of cards. She cheated? He asked after I finally gave him the full story. I nodded. He sat back on the porch swing and whistled. What AF asterisk 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 ng idiot. It was the first time I laughed in days. People often ask what the hardest part is after something like this. It's not the betrayal, as brutal as that is. It's not the paperwork, or the silence, or even the loneliness. It's the disorientation. For so long, every plan had included her. Every grocery list, every trip, every conversation about 5 years from now. She was part of the sentence, part of the room. And now, it was just me. I'd walk into the kitchen and still reach for the coffee mug she liked. I'd still check the passenger mirror expecting to hear her complaining about my lane changes. I'd catch myself halfway through a text and realize it was a habit, not a necessity. The routines weren't sad. They were muscle memory. But each time I caught myself doing them, it reminded me how far gone she'd been before I ever noticed. Emma hadn't just left. She'd started leaving a long time ago, one piece at a time. It made me question how much of what we had was real, and how much I just built in my head to avoid looking at what was right in front of me. That was the hardest part to admit, that I saw the signs and made excuses for them, that I accepted crumbs because I remembered how sweet the full loaf used to be. But not anymore. I took the photos from the envelope, the ones I'd left in the trash, and burned them in the fire pit behind the shop. Not as some symbolic cleansing. I just didn't want them anymore. Proof wasn't necessary. I had memory for that. The rest was clutter. Emma still sent messages. Emma, do you hate me? Emma, do you think we could ever be friends? Emma, did you ever love me? That one hurt. Not because of the question, but because she had to ask. I didn't reply. She eventually stopped trying. Or maybe just found someone else to aim her apologies at. That was fine with me. The neighborhood quieted. Her name stopped coming up in small talk. Melanie stopped parking on our street. The people who wanted to know what happened either already knew or lost interest. Life moved on. So did I. I deleted every photo of us from my phone. Not in anger, just to make space. Got rid of the framed wedding picture that used to hang in the hallway. Took down the calendar she'd color-coded. I even threw out that pair of slippers she always left under the coffee table. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about hate. It was about reclaiming my house one object at a time. One night, I sat on the porch alone, just breathing. For the first time in months, I felt still. There was no knocking, no crying through doors, no pretending, no more damage control. Just me, a cold drink, and the sound of nothing. And that, for the first time in a long time, felt like peace. I moved to a quiet house on the edge of town, bought a used SUV, got a dog. For the first time in years, I woke up without dread. I volunteered at a local garage, helping teens learn car basics. That's where I met Lily, steady, kind, no games. If she said she'd call, she did. There were no secrets, just presence. It wasn't grand, but it was real. And I finally felt like I was living again, not just surviving. Emma called once more. I didn't answer. Her final message said she was leaving the state. I deleted it. Months later, I saw her in a parking lot, thinner, quieter. She looked at me, but I just got in my car and drove away. I felt no anger, no need for closure. I had a new home, a new peace. She was part of my past, and I had no interest in visiting. If you asked me what I lost, I'd say nothing I couldn't rebuild. I didn't get revenge. I got my life back,